Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going deep on global finance.
Ooh, yeah.
We're going to look at how it all works,
Right.
how it can totally go haywire, and what it all means for, well,
For everyone. Yeah.
for everyone, yeah. And especially if you're prepping for the UPSC exams
Absolutely.
with international relations as your focus.
This is key stuff.
This stuff is like gold.
Yeah.
We're digging into excerpts from
Oh, yeah.
this, a text that breaks down some of the most intense financial meltdowns in recent history.
Like textbook examples. It's fascinating.
And how they spread like, it's crazy, like wildfire.
Contagion, they call it.
Yeah, like,
It's wild how interconnected everything is, you know?
It is.
You might think, oh, economics, it's just numbers, charts, boring stuff.
Right.
But it's so tied into politics,
It is.
social issues, everyday life, and then when you zoom out to global finance,
Oh, man.
it's a high-stakes game the whole world's playing.
Okay, so rewind with me here for a sec. Our source material starts with this whole Keynesian economics thing. It's
Nope.
big in the post-World War II era. The idea was basically government stepping in
Right.
to kind of smooth out the economic roller coaster.
Stabilize things. Yeah.
Avoid those massive booms and busts. Like, did that even work?
Well, for a while, it kind of seemed like, a decent strategy.
Okay.
But then, oh boy, the 1970s.
Oh, yeah.
And this thing called stagflation hits.
Stagflation, what's that?
High inflation, right, but also sluggish economic growth.
Ugh, a bad combo.
A nasty combo, yeah. And Keynesian theory was like, nope, those two can't happen at the same time.
It was like the rule book got thrown out.
Totally. It was a real
Yeah.
head scratcher. And that's where you see this rise of neoliberalism.
Okay.
The mantra, deregulation, hands-off approach from government.
Less government intervention.
Exactly. The irony is, though, that shift towards less regulation, you could argue, made things even more unstable.
Oh, how so?
It's like, imagine taking the training wheels off a bike before you're really ready.
Oh, I see.
You might feel that freedom, but you're also way more likely to wipe out.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good analogy.
So this move towards deregulation,
Yeah.
it kind of fuels what we call financialization, right?
Okay, break that down for me.
Basically, financial markets become the big players in the economy.
They call the shots.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And then add globalization to the mix.
Oh,
Money zipping across borders faster than ever, harder for any one nation to control.
so it's like things are getting out of control.
In a way, yeah. And that brings us to this term, casino capitalism.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. With all the risk and
The
speculation,
gamble.
it really does feel like a casino.
It does.
Susan Strange, brilliant scholar, she coined that term.
She knew it was up.
She saw it, this system where financial markets were playing with such high stakes,
Yeah.
often totally detached from the real economy, the goods
Wow.
and services.
Right.
It's like gambling, but with whole economies on the line.
That is a scary thought. You know what I mean? This isn't just theoretical.
Oh, absolutely not.
For anyone listening, this has real-world consequences.
100%.
Think about the impacts on jobs, prices.
Global power dynamics even, it all shifts because of this.
So we're talking big stuff here.
Huge. But let's get specific.
Okay.
Our source material dives into the Asian financial crisis of 1997.
Oh, yeah.
Textbook example of this financial contagion we're talking about.
Okay, so walk me through it. What happened?
All right, so it starts in Thailand.
Okay.
Speculators basically bet against the Thai baht, force the government to devalue their currency.
So they're like attacking the currency.
In a way, yeah, and it was like dominoes.
Oh, no.
Triggered similar attacks on other currencies in the region, Indonesia, Malaysia, South Korea.
All across Asia.
Even Hong Kong and China felt the tremors. What started as a regional crisis, boom, global.
Wow.
Yeah, so what was the fallout? You mentioned economic turmoil, job losses.
Our source material talks about the IMF coming in with bailout packages.
Right, the IMF stepping in, but you know those bailouts?
Yeah, they're
They
contradicting.
come with strings attached.
Big time.
What's interesting is how different countries responded.
Oh, yeah.
Some, like Indonesia, South Korea, they took the IMF loans, implemented their policies,
Which were?
often austerity measures, further liberalization.
Okay.
But Malaysia, they went a different route.
Really?
They imposed capital controls, tried to limit that rapid outflow of money.
So two very different approaches.
Like a real-world experiment, each country trying to figure it out under immense pressure.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah, and, As big as the Asian financial crisis
It
was,
was big.
it was almost like a warm-up act for what came a little over a decade later,
Oh, you're talking
the
over.
global financial crisis of 2007-2009.
Oh, man, I remember that, watching the news, feeling like the whole system was gonna, like,
Implode.
yeah, implode.
It was a close call. How did we even get to that point, you ask?
Yeah, how did we,
Remember that super bubble we talked about?
like, casino capitalism?
Exactly. Years of deregulation, blind faith, and self-regulating markets
Right.
led to this colossal buildup of debt.
Oh, so much debt.
Tied up in these super complex financial instruments most people didn't even understand.
Like a house of cards.
Precisely. And of course, it all came crashing down.
Yeah, it did.
One of the most insightful critiques of this whole system came from George Soros.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard that name.
Legendary investor, philanthropist. He argued that this market fundamentalism,
Market fundamentalism? What's that?
this unshakable belief that the market would always self-correct,
All right.
that played a huge role in the crisis.
So you're saying it was more than just, like, bad decisions or greedy people?
Oh, for sure. Soros pointed out that asset prices themselves can create instability.
How so?
When prices keep climbing, it fuels this speculative frenzy, creates a bubble, and boom,
It bursts.
it has to burst. And this ties into the concept of moral hazard.
Moral hazard. Okay, I'm not familiar.
Basically, people are more willing to take insane risks when they know someone else will pay if things go south.
Like those big banks getting bailed out.
Exactly. They were playing with other people's money.
This is heavy stuff, but it feels important to understand,
Oh, it is. Absolutely.
to make sense of the world today.
You got it.
It's not just about, like, abstract economic theory. These crises have real consequences.
And real-world impacts, for sure. And those consequences often play out on a global scale.
Right. That brings us to how these crises reshape the global power landscape.
Okay, so let's shift gears and talk about that.
Sounds good to me.
We'll start by looking at the U.S. and China, this relationship.
Okay, the big players.
Right. The 2007-2009 crisis, even though it started in the U.S.,
Yeah.
it had a huge impact on the power balance between these two giants.
How come? Because China was less affected?
Exactly. U.S. was struggling with recession. China kept chugging along.
So some people thought China was going to take the lead.
It seemed that way. A major shift in global economic power.
But I'm guessing it's not that straightforward.
You're right. It's much more nuanced than that, the U.S.
Yeah.
Even though weakened, still has major influence, especially with global financial institutions.
And the dollar being the world's reserve currency.
Right. Exactly.
So there's more to unpack here.
Oh, absolutely. But I think it's time for a quick pause.
All right, sounds good.
We'll be back in a moment to delve deeper into this U.S.-China dynamic.
And what it means for the future of global order.
Can't miss it. Stay tuned.
We'll be right back. And we're back, digging deeper into this whole global finance thing.
Yeah, how it's shaping the 21st century. It's a wild ride.
Before the break, we were talking about the U.S. and China.
Right. This fascinating kind of tense relationship.
It's like a dance, right?
It is an intricate dance. They're both so intertwined.
But they're competing too.
Yeah, constantly jockeying for position. Like, our source material points out the symbiotic link between their economies.
Symbiotic meaning?
Well, on one hand, you've got China buying up U.S. dollars,
Okay.
keeps their currency cheaper, boosts their exports, that export-driven growth.
And the U.S., we've been borrowing heavily from China.
Right, to fuel consumption, government spending.
Sounds kind of precarious.
It is a balancing act for sure. Makes you wonder, where's the tipping point?
Yeah, what happens if it all goes off balance?
Our source material hints that as China's economic power grows, there's potential for friction, maybe even conflict down the line.
So is it more like a rising tide lifts all boats, or are we heading for a clash of the titans?
That's the million-dollar question.
I've heard this term Thucydides trap,
Oh, yeah.
where a rising power challenges the established one, things get messy.
It's a theory that's been debated for ages. Some say economic interdependence.
Like they need each other.
Exactly. It's in both their interest to keep things stable, but others point to China's growing military.
Oh, right.
They see a potential powder keg. It's definitely a situation to watch closely.
This is all super relevant, for anyone trying to understand international relations.
Absolutely.
Especially those UPSC aspirants out there. How should they be thinking about all this in terms of global power?
Great question. It's crucial to understand that economic power. It's a key part of a nation's overall power.
Oh.
The ability to influence those global financial flows, dictate trade terms, control resources.
That's a lot.
It all adds up to serious geopolitical leverage.
So, like, in the 21st century, economic strength is just as important as military might.
You got it. It's not just about who has the biggest army anymore.
That's a big shift.
It is, and that's why understanding these financial crises,
Right.
these trends like financialization, globalization,
Yeah.
they're so important. They reshape the global landscape, create opportunities, challenges.
It's all connected.
Exactly, and that's a crucial takeaway for anyone studying international relations.
Couldn't agree more.
Going back to China and the U.S.,
Yeah.
prime example of how economic interests can bind countries together.
That also create tension.
Right, it's a complex dance, always changing.
Feels like we're at a turning point, the decisions made now by both China and the U.S.
Yeah,
They could have huge implications for the future of the global order.
no doubt about it.
That's a lot to take in.
It is. For our listeners, especially those prepping for the UPSC, where should they go from here?
Yeah. What resources, what approaches would you recommend?
Well, diving deeper into these specific crises we've talked about.
Okay.
The Asian financial crisis, the 2007-2009 one. There's so much info out there.
Like, where should they look?
Look at different perspectives on the causes, the consequences, the policies.
Right.
Compare and contrast how various countries were affected, how they handled things.
So go beyond our little deep dive here.
Exactly. Hit the books, do some research, get into the detail.
Into the nitty-gritty.
Yes. Build a mental map of the global financial system, its strengths, weaknesses, those pressure points.
And don't just focus on the past.
Right. Keep an eye on current trends, new challenges, potential flashpoints. It's always evolving.
Staying informed is key.
You got it. It might sound daunting,
It does a bit.
but it's also exciting. You're uncovering the hidden machinery that makes the world tick.
That's a cool way to put it.
That's what makes studying international relations so fascinating.
Yeah.
It challenges you to think critically, connect the dots, grapple with these complex issues.
Big stuff.
Big stuff.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. Keynesianism, casino capitalism, financial contagion.
Shifting global power. It's a lot.
But there's one big theme we haven't fully tackled. The future of the global order.
Right. In this crazy 21st century.
That's a topic worthy of its own deep dive.
It really is. What do you say we tackle it head on after a quick message?
Sounds good to me.
We'll be right back to explore what the future might hold for the global order. Stay tuned.
All right, we're back and ready to tackle this big question, the future of the global order.
Yeah, where are we headed in this crazy 21st century?
It feels like we're at a crossroads. So much uncertainty.
You're right. As we've seen, the global order is in flux.
Things are shifting.
Big time, the rise of China, the U.S. maybe not being the only superpower anymore.
And everything's so interconnected economically.
Exactly. It's a dynamic landscape, always changing.
And then there's this whole financial instability thing. Are we just lurching from one crisis to the next?
It's a real concern, the system we've been talking about.
The deregulation, the financialization.
Yeah, it's fragile. Have we learned from the past, or are we headed for another meltdown?
That's the big question.
It is. There's this constant tension, between needing regulations,
Right.
but also wanting those free markets.
It's like finding that balance.
Exactly. Control versus chaos. Where's the sweet spot?
Where do you stand on that?
It's not an either thing. We've seen what happens with totally free markets.
They can go too far.
Too much risk, instability, but too much regulation.
Stifles things.
Yeah, it can stifle innovation, growth. It's about finding that balance.
So smart regulation, not just more,
Exactly. But that takes international cooperation.
which is tough.
It can be, remember, financial crises don't care about borders.
Please, Brad.
They do, so you need coordinated action from the big economies.
Makes sense, but is that even possible right now?
What do you mean?
With all the division, the mistrust between countries, it's like
You're right. It's a major hurdle. That's why these conversations matter.
to understand each other better.
Yeah, to engage, to find ways to build a more stable system, a fairer one, too.
It's a big task, but we got to try.
We do, for a better future, absolutely.
Okay, so for our listeners, especially those UPSC folks who are probably taking notes like crazy,
I hope so.
what are the key takeaways? What should they be thinking about as they study all this?
Well, first off, understanding economic history, it's crucial.
Like how we got here.
Exactly. The patterns, the booms and busts, the different economic ideas.
Right, they keep coming back.
They do. They've been playing out for centuries, recognizing those patterns
That's you understand the present.
and anticipate what might happen next.
So big picture thinking, connecting past, present, future.
You got it. And of course, staying informed about current events.
The news, basically.
Yeah, the global economy is constantly changing. You got to keep up.
So read, follow good sources, talk to people, get those different perspectives.
Exactly. And lastly, think critically. Challenge what you read and hear.
Don't just take it at face value.
Right. Dig deeper, question things, form your own opinions.
Being an active learner.
Yes, an engaged citizen of the world.
You've given us a lot to think about. We've covered financial markets, global power dynamics, the future of the whole system. It's been quite a journey.
It has a thought-provoking one, hopefully.
Definitely, for me at least, I'm left wondering what can we as individuals do to make this system more resilient?
That's a great question. It's easy to feel powerless with these global challenges.
Yeah, it's like, what can one person do?
But individual actions multiplied across millions of people.
That adds up.
It really does. It can make a difference.
So stay informed, stay engaged, use your voice, take action.
Exactly.
Well, that's about all the time we have for this deep dive.
Wow, time flies.
If you want to explore more, check out the show notes for extra resources.
Lots of good stuff there.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends.
We appreciate your support.
We'll be back next week with another deep dive into a critical global issue.
Until then, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep exploring the world around you.
See you next time.